Hi, I'm Julia Hankins, and in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you my 10 top tips for using props within kids' yoga lessons. So, some people may think that you don't need props for within yoga lessons and it should be all about connecting with the self, but I don't actually agree with that. I think that when we're working with children, we need to engage them, we need to excite them, and we need to get them wanting to partake in our yoga lessons. And so part of that is using props, and that's because our brains are wired for novelty. And so when we bring in something new to the lesson, the children's brains are interested and they want to know more about what we're going to do, and it helps them to be involved and it helps them to remember the lesson and put a hook on their learning too. They can relate it to a substantial thing. Also, I think when we give children props to hold, then we're helping those children who may struggle with anxiety. So you may have had this experience before where you've taught a class and then afterwards you found that your mat's been picked and all these little bits of your mat are all over the floor. And that's because some children really need to fiddle with something. They feel a bit anxious about the situation. Perhaps you're a new teacher, perhaps this is a different situation for them, and holding something, having something with them is very grounding and it supports them to feel safe within the environment. So I'm a big fan of props, and but I think there are some boundaries and some ways that we can make the use of props really effective in our classes. So the first one is safety first. We need to make sure that the props that we're using are suitable for the age of children and the developmental stage that they're at. So pom-poms can be a lot of fun, but you don't want to be using pom-poms with children who are still at the stage where they put things in their mouth. That's just one example. So before you use a prop, have a think about whether it's actually appropriate or safe to use with the group of children that you're using it with. So the second thing is keeping our props clean. So how often you clean your props will really depend on the type of children you are using it with, how often you're using the prop, the type of settings that you're in, how regularly they're getting used, and you're going to need to find a happy medium that works for you in terms of manageability, but that also ensures that your props are clean. And you also need to check that each prop is still safe as well, so you haven't got any loose stitching, there's no loose parts that might fall off and pose danger if it goes in a child's mouth. So those are my first two rules, not really rules, but they're my first two top tips. And my third top tip is remember the rules. So if you already know me, then you'll know that a big part of my practice with children is rules. I always start with rules. I only have 3. And whenever I introduce props, I also have rules around those. Now, is that because I'm a strict, horrible disciplinarian? No, it's because I understand that children need boundaries and they need to know what's expected of them, and they need to know how to succeed. And at heart, that's what all children want to do. They want to succeed. And when we share with them our rules for how to treat the props, then we're enabling them to succeed in using them. So for me, things that I say in my rules when I'm using props, well, it depends on the type of prop, but generally it's don't put it on or in your mouth, don't distract other people with it, don't throw it, it depends on what it is, but if it's like scarves, then don't wrap it around your wrist. So some of the rules are safety rules and some of the rules are hygiene rules, and some of the rules are kind of a behavior rule, and it will really depend on you, your style, what you're expecting from the children, but it helps children to feel secure. They're like, oh great, we've got this thing to play with and we know what we can and can't do with it. You've created safe boundaries for those children within the lesson. So my fourth top tip is to get the number right. So I learned this one really quickly. I had Hoberman sphere, and my idea was we were going to pass the Hoberman sphere around a circle of 30 children. I learned within like three seconds that was not that was not the best thing to do here. That was really not a good idea. And you'd think that being an experienced class teacher of like more than 20 years that I would have thought that through. I didn't. We all still make mistakes. Everybody, doesn't matter how experienced you are, you're still going to make mistakes, and that was one of mine. So whether you've got a class of 8 in a community class or whether you've got 30 children in a school hall, just consider how many props you've got and whether it's an appropriate number, and make sure you've got enough for everybody to use if that's the style of your lesson. So that's get the number right, number 4. My 5th tip is get your money's worth. I have spent hundreds, maybe going into thousands perhaps, on props over the years. I've been teaching for a while, so that's probably why. But some of those props I use again and again. And if you're interested in what those props are, then check out my freebie, which is all about my go-to props and how I use them in my lessons. Some of those props I use again and again, and some of them I've probably only used a couple of times, and I got excited by seeing them, and then when I use them I was like, it doesn't actually resonate with me. It's not something I use all the time. And so yeah, just get your money's worth and make sure that when you are using them, that you're using them multiple times within the lesson. And so, are you using that prop in the warm-up? Are you using it for a breathing technique? Are you using the prop for a mindfulness technique? Are you using the same prop to help support and extend a yoga pose, or to play a game with, or in relaxation? And just thinking, can you use that prop multiple times within the lesson to get your money's worth out of it, but also so that it's not just an expensive fiddle toy for the children and a tool for distraction, which is what props can be if we're not really being intentional and mindful about our use of them. So that's get your money's worth. And the 6th one is foster creativity. So you may have ideas of how you want the prop to be used within the lesson, and that's great. You've got it in your head. Okay, when we come to breathing, we're going to use it in this way. However, the children will have their own ideas for use, and I would just say allow them to be creative with the use of the prop. And can you be free? Can you free up your expectations a little bit here? Because when we allow children to have a little bit more ownership of the lesson and a bit more freedom, they grow in confidence, and they also just feel a lot more safe and supported within the lesson. Plus, you'll get some great ideas of different ways to use the prop because children are so imaginative and creative. So that was number 6, foster creativity. My 7th top tip is don't overwhelm. So yeah, you've got all of these new props that are really exciting. You want to use all of them now in all of your lessons. Brilliant. No. Because just like our brain thrives and is excited by novelty, we are also easily confused, and a confused brain shuts down and says no, and we can very easily get overstimulated, and in that situation children will just be distracted and overwhelmed and dysregulated, and the lesson will just not be as smooth sailing as you perhaps might like it to. And also you will feel overwhelmed if you've got like 3 or 4 different props that you're getting out at different stages of the lesson. That's overwhelming for you too. So strip it back and only have maybe 1 or 2 props that you use within your lesson, and then that will also help you feel calmer. It will help your nervous system. It will help the children engage better. And it will also mean that you're not carrying so many things to every place, wheeling around a big suitcase of props. You don't need all of them. Just strip it back and be really intentional with what you're using your props for. So that was don't overwhelm. My 8th tip is think before you buy. It can be really tempting to see a new thing, maybe on Amazon, maybe it's suggested for you as something you might like, or maybe you see another yoga teacher on Instagram or on Facebook or somewhere else using a prop that you don't have, and you perhaps think, oh yeah, that looks like fun. I think I'm gonna get some of those. Before you do, just consider how you will use it, because we all have our own teaching styles. We all have our own strengths and things that ways of teaching. So just ensure before you purchase that you know how you will use it, because otherwise you're just wasting your money. You're just spending lots and lots of money on new stuff that you may not really use. Take it from one who knows. That's been my experience either as well. Sorry. So, number 9, avoid one-time use. So, early on in my yoga teaching career with children, I spent a hell of a lot of money in hobbycraft, and it was usually for stuff for mindful crafts for the end of yoga. What a lovely thing. What a wonderful, beautiful thing. Yes, it is. Yes, the kids loved it. Yes, I loved it. But really, I spent an awful lot of money with the children creating something that they would then take home. They may have treasured it and kept it on their wall forever. Who knows? There may be children now, or there may be like grown adults now who have these wonderful mandalas on the wall that they created years ago at one of my yoga classes, perhaps, or perhaps they ended up in the bin, and so I'm talking about, stickers, things like that, that you just have created once and then the children have taken it home. So just consider, how can you make it a bit more sustainable? So instead of using stickers on paper, for example, to create a mandala, how about using stones or shells or leaves or things that you can use multiple times? Take a photograph of the mandala and then use it another time. So avoid buying things that you're just going to use once. If you really do enjoy creating something for the children to keep, maybe consider just saving that for a special occasion. So maybe once per term or once at the end of the year, and then it makes it more special. Okay, and my last one is mix it up. So you don't need to bring a new prop every single time to every single lesson, because that can just be a lot financially for you, but also for the children. So yes, their brains really love novelty, but they also thrive on familiarity too. And so it's trying to get that balance between novelty and familiarity, so that props that they've met before, they come back again and they come out like old friends. It's like, oh, it's the soft toys or whatever it is. The children love those props and love to see them return, but not necessarily the same ones every single week. So mixing it up so that you've got this really nice balance between novelty and familiarity. And so if you found this useful or interesting, then you may also like my freebie, which is all about my go-to props. What are my go-to props and how do I use them? Feel free to access that. I'll pop the link in the comments of this. Also, if you would like to know more about using props and how to use props confidently, then you might like my Props Like a Pro training. That's going to be live on Wednesday, February the 7th. But it will also have a replay available afterwards. And if you'd like to access that, I'll pop the link in the comments too. If you found this video helpful, you may like to sign up for my email list, where I share useful tips all the time to people on my emailing list. If there's something that you'd like me to do a video about, if there's something you'd like me to talk about, let me know. Just send me an email or on social media. I would love to hear from you. Thanks for watching.